On Thanksgiving Day, Special Counsel Jack Smith and his team were not resting. They filed an urgent letter brief to the Court of Appeals panel that will be determining whether a gag order imposed on the lower trial court, the federal court in Washington, D.C., should remain in effect. And in this letter filed by Special Counsel Jack Smith's team with the Court of Appeals panel deciding this issue, Special Counsel Jack Smith's team incorporated by reference an affirmation, a declaration, if you will, filed in the New York Attorney General civil fraud case by a safety threat officer who works for Judge Engoron in the New York State Court, who put forward numerous credible threats, heinous threats, directed at the judge in the New York case, Judge Engoron, as well as the judge's law clerk, as a direct consequence of Donald Trump's behavior. I'm Ben Meiselas. This is the MeidasTouch Network, where actual facts matter. I want to show you right now the letter brief filed by Special Counsel Jack Smith's team on Thanksgiving Day. And this follows a brief that was filed in the state court proceeding. There's a lot going on here. Let me just try to break it down quickly for you. There's the New York civil case taking place in a New York state court before Judge Engoron. Judge Engoron, back on October 3rd, imposed a gag order there. Donald Trump filed an emergency petition under Article 78 of New York state court proceedings to an appeals panel, the appellate division, First Department in New York, saying that the gag order there was unconstitutional. In response, the New York Attorney General Solicitor's office filed an opposition, and then Judge Engoron's security safety threat officer, someone who presides over and makes determinations about threats by against judges in New York, filed an affirmation explaining all of the direct threats that Judge Engoron's received and that Judge Engoron's law clerk has received. So there's the proceeding there. In the Washington, D.C. case, in the federal proceeding, Judge Tanya Chutkan imposed a gag order on Donald Trump, precluding him from threatening the special counsel's office and the special counsel's family, precluding Donald Trump from engaging in threats against the judge and court staff. Donald Trump filed an appeal to the D.C. Circuit. Remember, that was argued earlier in the week, and one of the questions that the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeal panel had is, are there specific examples of actual threats that have arisen as a result of Donald Trump's conduct, or is this merely hypothetical? Of course, it isn't hypothetical. So what Special Counsel Jack Smith's team was able to look at, for example, the threats against Judge Engoron and Judge Engoron's law clerk, and bring those as additional examples for the D.C. appellate panel in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals in making their decision. There was a lengthy oral argument. We covered it here on the MeidasTouch Network earlier in the week before a 3-judge panel. There ultimately will be determining if the gag order imposed by federal judge Tanya Chutkan is constitutional and appropriate. My prediction is that they may narrow the gag order slightly, but they are going to, I think, keep some variation and version of the gag order. Here's the letter. Special Counsel Jack Smith's team on Thanksgiving Day. The government submits this letter pursuant to the Federal Rules of Appellate Procedure, Rule 28J, to notify the court of a document filed on November 22nd, 2023, in connection with the appeal of a gag order imposed in New York v. Trump, the case number which was referenced in the party's briefing, and arises out of an incident that the district court discussed at the October 16, 2023 hearing. Specifically, the government refers the court to Exhibit E to the attached affidavit, which is a sworn affirmation by an employee of the New York State Unified Court System assigned to the Judicial Threats Assessment Unit, discussing defendant Donald Trump's October 3rd, 2023 social media post, which resulted in, quote, hundreds of threatening, harassing voicemail messages that have been transcribed into over 275 single-space pages. Because the parties referenced this matter in their briefs, and the court inquired at oral argument about evidence of ongoing threats and harassment, the government respectfully submits Exhibit E and the related documents for completeness as supplemental authority. So as we go to Exhibit E, which is on page 25 and 26, you'll see from the judicial threat officer how severe, how serious these threats are right here. Here's what the judicial officer says. His name is Charles Holen, who's employed by the New York State Unified Court System as a court officer captain in the Department of Public Safety, who makes this affirmation in opposition to petitioner's request for a stay of enforcement of the limited gag order. In other words, opposing the effort by Donald Trump to stop the gag order. And here, this safety officer is then going to list the threats to the court, the threats to the law clerk. They describe the foundation of their agency, the DPS, provides security service at every New York State courthouse. Once a judicial threat has been reported, court administration, local law enforcement, and court staff are notified by trained uniformed personnel that a threat exists. Prior to the commencement of the trial in the underlying matter, the Judicial Threats Unit became aware of harassing and disparaging comments and threats made about and toward Judge Engoron on social media. Once we conducted our assessment that found the threats credible, we contacted law enforcement, the FBI, and Homeland Security to devise appropriate security measures that would be implemented in order to protect the judge, his chambers, and his staff. On October 3rd, 2023, the threats, harassment, and disparaging comments increased exponentially and also were now being directed at the judge's law clerk. Specifically on October 3rd, Trump posted the picture of the law clerk. The law clerk's personal information, including her personal cell phone number and personal email addresses, have been compromised, resulting in daily doxing. She has been subjected on a daily basis to harassing and disparaging comments and anti-Semitic tropes. I have been informed by the law clerk that she has been receiving approximately 20 to 30 calls per day to her personal cell phone and approximately 30 to 50 message per day on combined sites of social media, LinkedIn, and personal email addresses. And then it goes on to talk about how the following are just some examples of the types of voice messages that Justice Engoron's chambers receive. And it's so horrific, I'm not going to read all of these examples. It's all cursing, anti-Semitic slurs, death threats over and over again. And as it's stated in the affirmation, could fill over 275 pages of single-space transcripts of the amount of threats. Jack Smith is telling the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, look, this is what the consequence is. This is not some hyperbolic, this is not some theoretical, hypothetical use of superlative, whatever you want to say. This is real. This is present. People are going to get killed because of this maniac Donald Trump and his conduct. And here are discrete examples we are showing you about the types of death threats that are taking place in New York. Action must be taken now to protect the safety of the court, to preserve the integrity of the judicial process, and we need to make sure we take steps or someone's going to get killed. Court of Appeals judges, that's what's going to go down, and you need to take action right now. So Jack Smith's team filing this on Thanksgiving, that's how urgent it was. And when we're dealing with life and death matters, that's the level of urgency it deserves. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 2 million subscribers thanks to your support. Check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.